evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Give me a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, please. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's 6:30. Let's give everyone maybe another minute or so to log on, and then we'll start. Good evening. I'm so glad to see you. Mr. Sanders is on. Ms. Blake, I am going to try to figure out how to make you a co-host. I think I just did that. Is State Rep Robaina on? Let me see. Give him a minute or so to get on.
He's a busy man these days.
He is. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. And Miss Wollman, you're on too. Let me make you a co-host as well. It's nice. There we go. Make a co-host. It's nice to meet you virtually.
You as well.
Thank you. Thank you for being on tonight.
Yeah, we've been on. Thank you for having this series. We appreciate it.
Of course, of course. I do see some new names on here, so welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anabelle Lima Taub. I'm a commissioner in Hallandale Beach. I've tackled condo and HOA fraud, and very, very proud to have sponsored an ordinance, the first of its kind in the state. I'm still trying to find out if in the country, but in the state of Florida, that aims to help condo owners and HOA homeowners and co-op property owners. So I think there's some realtors on here as well. We've got representatives from the Miami Realtor Association and also Mr. Sanders from the Broward, Palm Beach, and St. Lucie. Is it St. Lucie? I get mixed up. I'm sorry. Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Hi. So why don't you each briefly introduce yourselves, and we'll wait for Mr. Robaina to log on. Mr. Sanders, if you'd like to go on and introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll get started.
Sure. I'm Adam Sanders. I'm Senior Government Affairs Director for the Broward, Palm Beaches, and St. Lucie Realtors. I know it's a long title. We've been working on this with you all in Hallandale Beach for a while, along with the Miami Realtors, and we're just happy to be here. I know Mayor Geller on the other side of the issues issued some recommendations today. So we're going to take a look at those, and overall condo safety and condo transparency, as you all have done in Hallandale Beach, has been huge for us. So we're excited about it. And that's really it for now. And then Danielle, and then.
Thank you.
Or actually, you're the.
No, that's okay. Miss Wollman, would you like to introduce yourself? And then Miss Blake, and then we'll get started.
Sure, thank you. I'm Jennifer Wollman. I'm chairman of the board for Miami Realtors, and Karen Johnson, who's president of Broward, Palm Beaches, and St. Lucie apologizes for not being here tonight. It's her mom's birthday, so she's celebrating, but it's been great collaborating and getting all of these ideas out on the table.
Awesome. And then Ms. Blake.
Thank you, Commissioner. Danielle Blake, Chief of Public Policy with Miami Realtors. And I have a lot of updates for you tonight.
Wonderful. So I've made you both co-hosts, and this is really informal meeting, but I think all of you on here will have a lot of takeaways. We're going to do a Q&A session at the end. I know some residents wrote in some questions, but if you have specific questions to what Ms. Blake is going to speak about, or Ms. Wollman, you can go ahead and type it up in the chat section. I will do my very best to ensure that all of your questions are asked. So either one, Ms. Wollman, if you want to start, or Ms. Blake, whoever, you're both co-hosts on here with me. So I'm going to mute myself and let you lead the way.
Thank you. I'm going to let Danielle lead because she has the PowerPoint and has been, along with Adam, they've been the point people for.
I'll go ahead and enable it. And also Julio Robaina I saw was on here as well, so he was able to join. So let me go ahead and share the screen. Give me just a moment to get set up. Perfect. Okay, so as you can see, we have our chairman of the board, Jennifer Wollman, on here with us. So welcome. And I do want to mention that this is a team effort. There's a lot of research that goes into this, and that's my role with the association, is Chief of Public Policy. So we look at what type of situations are in the market. Maybe it's affordable housing, maybe it's insurance. We look at different subject matter, and then we propose solutions based on the feedback that we get from the community. So it's very important for us to be on calls like this because we need to hear your stories. And so we'll talk about that as we go through here. And then also one of our past speakers that we've had is Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez, who's, as mentioned, she has the condo bill, and she's a state senator. She's also on staff. She's been with us for about 6 years. She was a city commissioner when she started with us. So she's been with us for a while. And well, give me a second because it's not letting me turn the page. Okay, hold on one second. There we go. So Ms. Karen Johnson, who is the president of the Realtors Broward, Palm Beaches, and St. Lucie County. She's the president this year of their association. We also have Matt Ledger with the association, Adam Sanders, who's with us tonight. And so from the local association perspective, those are all the people who are collecting information and gathering input. And then also Danielle Scoggins, who's VP of Public Policy, and Trey Goldman, who is our legislative counsel for Florida Realtors. And Trey has really done a lot of work in this arena. He's kind of our go-to person for condominium issues, and he's helped us do a lot of the research and feedback. And you're going to hear some of that tonight from the legal perspective and what we're pursuing. So first, you'll see Champlain Tower South on the left-hand side, and then of course the horrible tragedy on the right-hand side. But when we start looking at this from a policy perspective, we learned that there were 22 sales and 8 rentals in that building in the 12 months preceding the collapse. So the first thing that Trey Goldman, and when we were brainstorming, asked is like, what did these people really know before they entered into a contract to purchase or before they moved into the unit? So that's why I'm going to take a look at the law real quick on that. When we look at access to condominium docs, by January 1st of 2019, each association that has 150 units or more has to have a website that's password protected for the unit owners to go into and retrieve these documents. Let's say it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I want to know what's happening with the budget. What did we approve 8 months ago? With my password, I'll be able to go into this website and look up that information at any time. That's for units that are 150 or more. Take a guess how many Surfside had. 135 units. So they were not covered by this. So the first thing that when we're looking at looking at the law, they would not have been covered on this. So it is possible that the unit owners did not have access 24 hours a day to the important documents for the building, including the structural engineering report, which we'll get into in a moment. The next thing that we looked at is at what point in the transaction do they have access to the documents? And this is something really important I want to share with you. So it is here. So it says I'm sorry, let me go back. Each prospective purchaser who has entered into a contract for the purchase of a condominium unit is entitled at seller's expense to a copy of the declarations, the articles, the bylaws, the rules, the financial statement, and the FAQs. Okay. Oh, sorry, let me go back. So again, it's after they enter into the contract. So the first thing that we looked at is that too late? A lot of times you need this information ahead of time. There's something called a condo rider, and this is really important for this statute. You're entitled to that information only if you ask for it as the purchaser. So if they failed to ask for this information, it is possible that they did not receive the budget docs, the governing docs, all the stuff that we've talked about in past condo series. Also, once they ask for the information, it's up to the seller to provide it. So what if I were a seller and it was 15 years ago, I got that information, I put it on the shelf, now I have a listing agent, she says she wants that information, I go and I provide exactly what I received 15 years ago. There's nothing in the statute that says it has to be, well, it does say current here, but as far as the financial information, it doesn't say that it has to be the current information that's provided. So what's the check and balance of this when we start looking at the documents? Who's making sure that this is the most updated information? Also, when you're entering into a contract for the buyer, you need those financial documents prior to making an offer because the most utilized product that we have in the market is Fannie and Freddie, and you'll see here, if a full review, meaning the association is putting a minimum of 10% into a reserve account, you can come in with 3 to 5% as your down payment as the buyer. In 49 other states, if the association is not putting down a minimum of 10%, now there are other requirements, but this is the #1 deterrent. So if they're not putting down 10% into a reserve, they're not putting a minimum of 10% into a reserve account, that buyer has to come up with 10% down in 49 states. In Florida, because Fannie and Freddie consider Florida to be high risk, they require the buyers to put 25%. So I'm going to make an offer on a condo. Let's say the condo is $200,000. Instead of $20,000 as my down payment, I'm going to need $50,000 as my down payment solely because the association did not put a minimum of 10% into a reserve account. So that is huge for us. That's the #1 affordable housing crisis that we've had. And that's actually the reason why we got involved in looking at condominium docs, because a buyer needs that information in order to figure out if they're going to need 20,000 or 50,000. But what did I just tell you? The buyer doesn't get that information until they're already under contract. So the first thing that we've been advocating with Florida Realtors is that this needs to be done ahead of time. And that is exactly what you've done in Hallandale Beach. So we'll touch on that in a minute. But if you go here to the statute, we look at the reserves, and it may shock a lot of people to know that there's already a requirement in statute that anything that costs over $10,000, the association, the condominium association, has to already be putting money aside into a reserve account to pay for that. Anything like painting the building or roof replacement or asphalt paving, anything that costs over $10,000, they have to, by law, put money into a reserve account to pay for this. But the same statute says at an annual meeting, by the majority of people present at that meeting, you can waive it to no reserves or less reserves than what is required. And this is what the majority of our associations do in South Florida. That happened in 2008 in the downturn of the market when associations were looking just to survive. So what was the best thing they could do? They looked at the statute and they said, you know what, we don't have to have reserve funding. So let's waive our reserves fully so that we don't put any into the reserve account this year, because it's going to help us with all of these owners that are not paying because they're going through a foreclosure crisis, for example. So that's when we saw that customary practice in our market. And now fast forward, that was in 2008. Here we are in 2021, and that has really become a barrier to entry for our buyers in this market. So in Hallandale Beach, the great thing about your model is that you ask for this information. You ask for a copy of the annual adopted budget. You can look at that and you can see if the association is putting a minimum of 10% into a reserve account like Fannie and Freddie asked for. And if they do, there are other things I do have to say, like pending litigation or owner occupancy ratio. But the big one that I mentioned is the big disqualifier is if they're not putting money into that reserve account. So if they are, let's say they're budgeting 15% into a reserve account. Now I know as a buyer that there's a possibility I could come up with 3% or 5% as opposed to having 25%. So identifying which condos had that was a huge priority for us. And that's exactly what you did in Hallandale Beach with your ordinance. So I love to give you credit every time because this was a huge, huge, huge deal. Now, in the past, we've talked about taking this to other counties, specifically Miami-Dade County and then Broward County as well. In Miami-Dade, we have spoken with the county commissioner. He actually filed the draft language on early June, and remember Surfside happened on June 24th. So he had this documentation in the works and bill drafting, but now they've come back and they said, we can't do exactly what Hallandale Beach is doing because we have to treat all buildings the same. And there's a statute that preempts us and all of this stuff. So we put in a request through Florida Realtors, Danielle Scoggins, as I mentioned, to DBPR, who got this opinion back from the Department of Business and Professional Regulations. And they say the legal effects of 718-507 do not preempt county, because we were requesting for Miami-Dade County, do not preempt the county from requiring associations to remit their governing docs and annual approved budget into a central repository at the county level. 718.507 mostly affects placement and construction of condominium buildings themselves, not the paperwork. This is huge for you in Hallandale Beach as well, because now you have an opinion from the legal team at DBPR that says you absolutely have a right to collect these documents. You are not preempted by the state. So we've taken this opinion back to the county attorneys. Actually, tonight is the budget meeting to Miami-Dade County, so I'm trying to do both to listen in and work on this as well. But they have not responded yet, but we are going to continue to workshop that bill and then, of course, work with our association and Broward County to take this to the county level as well. So next is the 40-year recertification and structural engineering reports, just to give you a quick update on that. And I want to tell you, prior to Surfside, this was not a conversation. No one came to us and asked for that 40-year recertification. All of a sudden, after the building collapsed, we started getting phone calls and emails from members saying, how do I get the 40-year recertification report? And how do I get the structural engineering report that would accompany that? And I will tell you, that is not public record back then, back in June. They had it internally, they had a system in Miami-Dade County for this. And also in 2005, Broward County started requiring this as well. Those are the only two counties in the state that require this. So internally, they had a system. We made a call to the mayor's office and said, we are working on a portal to make this public so that you can go in and search this documentation. And I'm hoping that Broward County will follow what Miami-Dade has done as well. We put all this information on a website for our members to go and find. So let me just clarify real quick. If the building is located in unincorporated Miami-Dade County, you can use the portal and find the information. But if the building is located in a municipality like Hallandale Beach, for example, well, Hallandale Beach is in Broward, but you get the point. And Miami Beach, we'll use that. So if you're going to Miami Beach and you're looking for a building, you have to click on this button, which is in the property appraiser's office. And it's a list. And Marty Kier spoke to that last time. He's also created the same list that you can contact the building official for that municipality, because each entity has they're in charge of their own documents. So for Miami-Dade County, they created this portal where you can go in, you can put the name of the association here, you can hit search, and as long as that association is located in unincorporated Dade County, you're going to see the information come up. So just pulling a random example here, the Jockey Club condo, you'll see you actually have to go to the property appraiser site to find out when it was built. It was built in 1968. They were due for their 40-year recertification in 2008. You'll see here that both the structural and engineering reports were approved, and they were issued their letter of recertification on June 27th of 2008. They now are due for the 50-year recertification, and I don't have that here as an example, but they did the same process. They went through, they got the approval letter. So just showing you an example of how the portal works. And with that, I think we'll take any question and answers any questions that you have.
let's see. Just had one comment regarding the, let me see, go over here. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. There's someone named HP. Let's do away with waiving reserves. Then Representative Robaina answered that will be removed. I said I agree about the reserves. And then Dr. Mancini said, so reserves will be mandatory with passage of the new bill, ? I don't know who wants to take that on.
I'll take it, Julio, unless you've heard anything different. You know, the legislative session just started their committee meetings last week. They just went through their first week of committee meetings. So far, and we are in contact with our state association, there's not a proposal yet to require mandatory reserves, nor is there anything to take like the 40-year recertification statewide instead of leaving it up to locals. We just haven't seen anything. Now, that's not to say that it won't be coming. We're aware of several bills that are in drafting right now, and then there'll also be several more that's coming. We're kind of hearing in the House, they're going to put a big package together, what we refer to as a train, and we'll see lots of different changes in that. Julio, do you want to comment as well?
I do, but I want to say hello to my friend first.
And-
How are you?
And please introduce yourself, because there are quite a few new people on. We have 56 people on today, and quite a few of them have not been on these Zooms before. So if you'd do the honors and introduce yourself.
No, my pleasure. I'm Julio Robaina, the former state representative that wrote condo laws from 2008 to 2010. And I've been involved in this ever since in the private sector through property managing also. But more importantly, I've been asked to help with putting together of new legislation as a result of this downfall problem that we had, this sad situation, which in my opinion should have never happened. But I did want to say again, hello to you, Anabelle, and my friend Jennifer. I haven't seen her in a long time. It's nice to see you.
Hi, you as well.
It's nice that we have, you keep aligning yourself with the greatest people and the greatest minds, Anabelle. So I tell you, it makes my job so much easier. But that said, there's a lot going on. And I will say that there is going to be a train, which is going to be, as Danielle was explaining, there's going to be a bunch of bills. If you notice right now, remember session starts in January, but they're already starting to submit some bills, everything from the condo fraud bills to other small stuff. If you notice, a lot of members don't even have all their bills filed in the House or in the Senate. So there'll be a lot coming. But the word is there's so much of it that they'll put together what they call a train. They may call it the Surfside Association bill. And on that bill, they'll try to take all those bills and try to take the best parts of them all and create a piece of, legislation that will be the best thing for everyone. Danielle, I just want to go right on to something that I even learned from you at our last town hall meeting that we had in Doral, that again, those documents, you have to ask for them. And that's really, that knocked my socks off. You think you know it all, and you really don't realize that, you have to ask for it. Well, guess what? The sellers are not going to want it unless you want to give it to you. And that's South Florida, typical of South Florida. So I think it should be mandatory. And of course, prior to a sale, so that you know what you're getting yourself into. You're buying and into an association and so forth. And I know that's going to be addressed. And I'll end with this. Anabelle, congratulations to you. You passed the challenge. Here goes our county government always trying to put their 2 cents worth in there. And they were wrong. They were basically told by DBPR that you have the right to do what you're doing. So kudos to you, and I'll be quiet for now.
Thank you. And just a note for all the new participants on tonight. I've said it before. I mean, the ordinance that I sponsored and was passed in Hallandale Beach was years in the making. And, for years, I didn't have support for this ordinance. And Representative Robaina is really responsible for a lot of the language that's in the ordinance and helping me to bring this forward in front of my colleagues. And finally, last year, it got support and it passed. But, the credit is not all due to me. So thank you to you for really being there for me where I couldn't get anyone to help, whether it was the county or state. So again, thank you. Danielle, let me go to the next question, and any of you can take it. Currently, Condo Board of Directors of almost imperial powers. There seems to be two remedies. One, elections, two, recall type vote. What's needed is a forum provided by the city where a case against a board of director in terms of important failings or due diligence failures currently has a platform for presenting their views, and it's actually propaganda where unit owners can present their case to refute the board of directors statements. During board of director meetings, the BOD press and executive committee controls ability of those who can speak, and they can talk about what unit owners need is a process that can be appealed to and get help to make sure that unit owner's case is evaluated by a neutral party with some executive power.
I think it's a good time for Julio to talk about the condo task force fraud bill that he's working on with Senator Garcia. I'm sorry, Senator Rodriguez.
And then also, if you might give a very short explanation on really what municipalities, how our hands are tied in getting involved between board of directors and unit owners because of associations being private entities. So if you might, I know we have a lot of new people on today, so thank you.
Well, let me start by saying that it's great to have a bunch of laws and statute, but if you don't have the enforcement arm of it, laws are basically useless, let's be honest. So you do need to have the enforcement arm. DBPR for years, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me, they've been more administrative. I call it the paper pushing, let me fine you, type situation. Tallahassee really hasn't done what it was anticipated to do when you use the word that they regulate condo associations. But there's this one little aspect of enforcement that hasn't been addressed. It's called fraud and corruption that goes on in condominiums. Luckily, it's a very small percentage, because I tell you, love my board members. The majority of board members are honest, decent people just trying to look out for their interests, their investment. However, come to my county, Miami-Dade County, capital fraud in all the state. I don't say that with a grin on my face. And unfortunately, we have cases right now where we got people who have stolen up to $14 million. I mean, it's ridiculous how bad it is. But what has happened in the past, and I'm sure there's people on this Zoom meeting that will understand this, when you think you have a potential fraud of any kind, try going to your local police department and telling them to investigate this. They just are going to tell you, well, first thing they're going to tell you, you're an association, this is a civil matter, even though you're talking about something that's criminal. And then finally, they're going to tell you, we don't have the manpower. Our detectives are doing everything from vehicle, burglary to whatever other crimes that they investigate. And this is not at times a priority. So what we're doing is creating the first ever condo fraud task force, meaning these are police officers, and it starts with the screening. It starts with the state of Florida and the condominium ombudsman's office. We had to tweak it because we wanted him in the attorney general's office. Won't get into the long or the short of that. Our condo ombudsman in Florida will be the screening mechanism that people will file what they think it is that they have as proof of a potential fraud or something illegal, mismanagement. Fraud, by the way, is a big word, but there's a lot of other things that take place in these condominiums that are actually criminal in nature. So he'll screen them. And then what we're doing, the second part of the bill, is we are establishing a law enforcement group under the office of the state attorney general. So these are law enforcement officers with subpoena power and arrest powers and everything else. They'll have a large staff to be able to do an audit if it's necessary. And when there is probable cause, they then will turn the program over to, the actual findings, I should say, to the state attorneys. Mind you, since Florida doesn't like to take on these, call it test runs, they can't do it statewide. They're doing it only in what they call a task force that is basically a test. We're going to be doing it first for Dade County, Broward County, and Monroe County. So that's going to be how we're going to initiate it. And these individuals, I guarantee you, I'll say that publicly, will get arrests. And I just had a meeting with our state attorney last week. Our state attorney in Miami-Dade County is Kathy Rundle, and she loves it because they don't have the manpower to be doing investigative work when they're not even supposed to do investigative work. They're supposed to prosecute. Then, of course, I've gone to all 34 municipalities in Dade County, and all of them tell me the same thing. You know, they'd say, Representative, we'd love to be able to assign people, but we don't have the time or the manpower, and we don't even know what most of this entails. So you'll have, again, what we're going to do is create a specialized group of law enforcement officers with offices, more than likely in Broward, with investigators in the officers out in the field, the ability to do a lot when it comes to the issue of investigating potential fraud and mismanagement. And we'll then take these cases and hand them over to the state attorney that is responsible for prosecuting. That's pretty much it. I don't want to be too long-winded. I think the bill, I want to thank Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez. She's already sponsored the bill in the Senate. It's Senate Bill 274. If you guys want to take a look at it. And there's also over in the House, we have a representative. Gosh, I always forget the gentleman's name. But anyway, we have
Thomas Fabricio.
Thank you very much, Danielle. And he's
You're
a
welcome.
representative from Miami Lakes. He'll be taking on the bill in the House. And then finally, all these other bills that you'll see them coming out shortly. But again, not everything it's a lot of this stuff still in bill drafting. I'm done.
And if I might, I know there's some more questions and we'll get to them. And there's also questions that were emailed in, but picking up on Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez, you know, I'm very, very thankful to her and the work that she's done. And before the Champlain Tower tragedy earlier this year, she really was at the forefront on a state level to tackle these issues, and no one really was supporting her. And if I'm misstating, please correct me, but no one supported her. And you know, after the Champlain Towers, you started seeing some politicians, and you know, I'm just so sick and tired of the games that politicians play, and you know, love the screen time and love to be on camera and love the media attention, but really the senator was at the forefront. She continues to be at the forefront of this. And so I think that there are participants on here that not everyone's from Hallandale Beach. If you live in Miami-Dade County, please see if she's in your district. Well, actually, it doesn't matter if she's in your district or not, but we should continue to support her, and please send her a note of thanks, because I can tell you that this is a topic that there are lobbyists and a lot of special interests that do not want to see this type of legislation pass. I'd venture to say that even after the Champlain Tower tragedy, there's still a lot of pushback. So with that said, let me get to a couple of other questions. My condo association is not compliant with the 40 recertification for 2 out of 3 towers. Can the city of Hallandale enforce this regulation? HP, if you'd send me an email, I will type it out and let me know which condo you live at. In previous meetings, I discussed BORA, which is the Board of Regulation and Appeals, that really Miami-Dade does not have to adhere to any guidelines because they don't have this organization, but we have this Broward government entity that really mandates what we can and can't do in some instances. So I don't know what you're speaking of exactly, but I'll type out my email address and I'll be more than happy to speak with you offline and be of assistance. My condo has all the funds necessary to complete the 40-year certification, but has dragged their feet for years and not completed it. What is the mechanism in the city to force them to act? Same thing, THG. I'm going to type out my email in 1 minute, and then you could please contact me offline. How do we see copies of these bills before they get voted on?
The only time they'll be able to see them is when they already have a bill number to it, meaning that they have been sponsored by a state representative or a member of the Florida Senate. And they're online. You can always go online, use the website for the state of Florida. For the representatives, they have their own website, and so does the Senate. But more importantly, join in on Zoom meetings like this. Believe me, we're a wealth of information for everybody. And I'll tell you, we probably talk more on your Zoom meetings, Anabelle, than in any other capacity that I can tell you. So this is a great way to find out that information that you're looking for.
Thank you.
And
And then,
do you mind if I take Thomas Dubb's question?
no,
Okay.
of course not. Of course not.
Okay. He said, my Hallandale condo built in 1973 is still going through a 40-year recertification. How can I find out specifically what areas have been inspected and passed or approved? Actually, Julio was there with us when he mentioned that we just did this public forum in Doral, and I want to share a story with you that was shared by Robert with us. And it's an important one because it highlights, again, I talked about the need to share these stories in order to find out what the issues are in the community. So this gentleman's name is Robert. He lives in Champlain Towers East, which, as you know, is the building right next door to Champlain Towers South. As a result of the collapse of Champlain Towers South, they have a crack in one of their columns that did not exist prior to the collapse. So the maintenance guy pointed it out to him. Of course, living in that building as a resident and being concerned, he reached out to the board of directors. They brought in a structural engineer. They requested for the inspection to be done. The report came back and said, your building is safe. And so he's asked for a copy of the report. And he was told that he is not entitled to a copy of that report because you have elected the board members to make this decision on your behalf. It is stories like that that we are collecting, that we're sharing with Florida Realtors so that we can advocate for a change. Because if you look through the statute, no one has asked for structural engineering reports before. We talk about governing docs, we talk about financial statements. No one has said structural engineering reports. And so we're going to see if that's one of the things in the train that we discussed in the House or in the Senate. If we can add that as one of the requirements, if you are a unit owner, you should absolutely be entitled to that document. Now in Miami-Dade County, the building director told us that they are going to start uploading those reports that accompany the permit whenever they apply for the permit to go through the 40-year recertification process. So we're still waiting for that to happen in Miami-Dade. I can't speak to where Broward is on that, but the state as a whole, it's not required right now. And that's one of the things that we're going to push for change. Add that to your list, Julio.
I'm actually writing it down.
Ms. Zeller asked, what was the ordinance? So in Hallandale Beach, we have the ordinance. It's the Condo and HOA Transparency Act. I'll be more than happy to email you the ordinance. If you live in Hallandale Beach, you should let your fellow neighbors in your building know that this ordinance exists. And let's find out if your association board members are compliant with furnishing the information that is now mandated by the city via this ordinance. So I will be more than happy to email you a copy of the ordinance, but it's the only ordinance in the state of Florida, and I wish other cities and other counties wouldn't keep kicking the can down the road. So Ms. Stella, I'll be more than happy to email you a copy of the ordinance and the updates we just had. And then Mr. Feinberg asks, can realtors be required to obtain these documents and insert them into listings prior to the MLS, allowing the listing to become active?
I'll take that one as well. And I just posted the link to the condo registration where you can read about the ordinance. And then there's also embedded a link there where you can click on it and you can find the associations that have already submitted their documents. So yeah, the portal, the Hallandale Beach portal is there for you as well. So Lloyd, where did it go? Okay, Lloyd, this is something that we looked at a few years ago when we were looking at financing. We had this request. And so we explored it with our MLS team about making this a mandatory field. So in other words, you couldn't put your listing in unless you had already obtained these documents. There become issues about when you accept the listing agreement, you have a certain amount of time in order to put it in. So that was one problem that we had. And the second one is that we have a rule So where we scan the MLS system to check for violations. And so if we made a mandatory field and they uploaded a blank sheet of paper, as the system saw an attachment, they have no way of knowing if it's a PDF attachment of a blank sheet of paper or if it's the governing docs and financial statements that are required. So we have explored it. It's just not a feasible right now to be able to do that with the current system that we have. And then also there's the legal side of it that would put it in jeopardy.
However, can I make a comment on
Yes,
that?
I was going to say,
However,
Madam Chair, I was just going to say, do you want to add anything?
However, as a listing agent, it's always a good idea to get all of the docs and all of the information that you can upfront. So as soon as you have a buyer interested, just like you give a seller's disclosure upfront, you give all of that upfront. And I have seen listings before that without it being required or mandatory, they do have the condo questionnaire, the financial information and everything as an attachment on the MLS.
Mhm.
All right, so if I don't see, is there anything I missed? Does fraud cover an action to repair structural deficiencies by the board of directors?
And that's a very good question. It can, if somebody knows that there is a life safety situation and you cover it up, absolutely. That's criminal in nature. People can die. So that's the way that it's presented. So let me be clear again. If there is a life safety situation, possibly that, there's lawsuits being filed against the association, the property manager, and the law firms that represented Champlain Towers. Why? Because it's very clear. You have an obligation. Their number one responsibility as board members is to the integrity of that structure of that building. So if you know this and you're hiding it, of course, and that's what they're going to go after. Unfortunately, the way that it's being dealt with because of the lack of a criminal agency to investigate, attorneys have to always go through the civil route of filing lawsuits against them. And then, of course, have you heard of criminal negligence? Well, yes, that's what you've got in a situation like that. So that's the quickest way I can answer that question. It's like a malicious intent to hide something and people were hurt or killed. Yes, you can be charged as a crime.
Okay, as a realtor getting ready to list a condo in NB, what is it that I need to make the listing more desirable? What do I need as the listing agent in terms of paperwork to present to potential buyers and buyers agents?
Actually answering her back right now. There's a great list under that statute that we talked about where associations with 150 units or more, they're required to put this behind a password protected site. It has a great list of the documents that you should be requesting. So I'll go ahead and post that statute here so everyone can click on it and take a look. But I also in the ordinance for Hallandale Beach, they also have a pretty great list of things that you should be looking at ahead of time collecting so that you can provide this information to the buyer, because praying that all buyers are asking for this information and checking yes on the condo writer. They specifically want this information ahead of time or after they get into the contract.
Okay. With regards to Julio's comments, who would you report this to? City, as far as the building department, code enforcement?
Well, the first step is always to call the city or county, depending where your jurisdiction is, and report it. We're telling people all over, and some people say, well, Mr. Robaina, be careful what you're doing because you're creating panic. I'm not creating panic. I'm telling you there's been deferred maintenance out there forever. And I'm telling people the first thing you want to do is pick up the phone because you want to see now what you call a reactive government after the disaster that we all saw. That the situation is that you call the county, you call the city. I guarantee you there'll be an inspector out there within a day. That's your first step. That's who you call. And the part that I talked about, could it be criminal negligence? That will be as they go down the line and time goes on, they'll look at it, well, when and if there were damages. Did somebody get hurt? Did it cost somebody their life? That's the aspect of where maybe criminal negligence comes in. But very quick, very short answer to your question is call the city or county where your structure's in and report it right away. By the way, the knee-jerk reactions right now from all municipalities and counties, even around the state of Florida, is incredible how they're all starting to move quickly on these issues.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Just posted another useful link. Okay, do we want to hear from Ms. Wollman?
I don't really have anything to add. I've just been making comments as we go along, but I know that Karen Johnson and Adam's probably going to talk about it, sat on a committee with the mayor, and they just came out with their recommendations of what they're sending to the legislature. So I don't know, Adam, have you seen that yet? I know it just came out like this evening.
I know, I saw it late today. So I was just glancing through it. I'd rather read through the whole thing. It was long. It was like 100 and something pages. So we'll be reviewing that over the next few days, and Commissioner.
And we can have you on next week if you'd like. I'll schedule another, I'm going to schedule a couple more of these. I apologize to your residents and everyone else. I've been really very, very sick in the last 3.5 weeks, almost a month. So I couldn't continue with the meetings, but if you're amenable and you're available next week, we can schedule you, and you can update the residents and other realtors as well.
That'd be great. I just rather read through the whole thing, and obviously.
Okay. Perfect. So let's do this. Let me get to the questions that were emailed in. Give me one moment to pull that up. And then for those on here, please feel free to type your questions in the chat, but let's get through the questions that were emailed in first. I have a common walkway patio area, and any one of you could take the lead on answering this question. I have a common walkway patio area shared with 2 other condo townhouses that is original. No one has replaced the area. It is a patio walkway area in front of the townhomes. The area in front of my neighbor's home has tiles that are broken, missing, and holes. It looks unsafe to walk on. My association claims that we should replace it. I do not own the land, and the condo association keeps telling us that it is our responsibility. I don't think they are correct, as it is a condo townhome and we don't own the land. Please clarify this at the meeting and send me a written response. According to Florida statutes, we do not own the land, and it is a condo association's responsibility.
Who does own the land?
The common area. And
so I was going to say with townhome condos are kind of tricky. They really need to read their documents to see who's responsible for what. So that's where I would have them start.
Okay.
And by the way, that is something that's why it's important that when people purchase in an association environment, and hopefully we can get this law to make it, proactive, meaning that they must get these documents and stuff. I know communities here in South Florida, over in Fontainebleau, that these people bought thinking they had a golf course, and the golf course didn't even belong to them. The developer kept that. They just didn't read that in the docs, and that after so many years, the golf course would revert back to the ownership of the developer. And what did the developer do? He took away the golf course and built more condos and blocked the view of other people. I mean, it's just one story after another that we can share with you. That's why it's so important that people, and I'd recommend that you hire an attorney, if you're purchasing, to read your documents. A lot of that stuff is not easily understood. So it's good that an attorney can read it for you. But the saddest part is, as Danielle explained it, and we were surprised also, you have to ask for it. That's just mind-boggling. Hopefully that will end and people will hire a professional to read the documents and tell you, by the way, that you're buying with this beachfront view, but that land there is not yours, so you may lose your view a couple years down the line. Very important. There's a lot of cases actually right now, lawsuits that are addressing that particular situation.
And to that point, once you get all of the information from the association, you only have 3 days to review it, to comment and back out. So if you're given a ton of information and you don't know, and you're having an attorney review it, I would get an extension of those 3 days if possible and have everybody execute that.
Just want to clarify real quick what I posted. The 1 through 8 in the chat is from our legal counsel on staff when the question was asked by our residential board about what information should they be asking for. This is the list that she came up with.
Okay, let me see. Next question is, I'm in the middle of a 40-year inspection for 2 properties that I manage. She gives the address. The architect that I hired for this project had COVID and did not work for a while, and now he is back and working. He is backed up, and I will not be able to complete the 40-year inspection process by the end of September, like the letter stipulated. Please let me know if you would be able to extend this for 2 months and make sure everything is done properly. I will get back to you and email the city manager's office and see what we can do. Next question, what is the appropriate recourse for apartment owners when fire department staff arbitrarily restrict use of common property at the behest of the board of directors members for hypothetical prevention concerns with no violation of co-op bylaws, fire safety codes, state county regulations, nor local ordinances, ?
That's such a long question. You're going to have to state it again. I couldn't understand it.
My apology.
No, no problem.
You know what? Let me see also if I can copy and paste it into
Mhm.
the chat box. Let's see.
Annabelle, I posed that question. If I could, I don't
Okay,
have an.
It's okay. I'll that's fine, Dr. Mancini. You can ask your question, but I have to keep it short. Okay.
Well, it's very straightforward, I think. Let me see. Well, okay. Why don't you go on to someone else until I get it up? The question itself.
Yeah, I have it. Let me ask it, and
Okay.
if you feel that I didn't ask all of it, then let me know. But basically what you typed up or what you asked me is, what is the appropriate recourse? And Julio, I have it up in the chat box. What is the appropriate recourse for? No, actually, let me redo it. Julio, let me see. Let me type it up again. Do you see it?
I do not.
You don't?
No, I don't. I don't
Okay.
see it.
Let me go
Oh,
to.
here we go. It
Yeah.
just came up. Okay. What is
Okay,
the
I'll-
appropriate recourse here?
Oh, great.
Okay, so I have a question on it. He's talking about apartment owners. Are these apartments owned by one owner, or is it, are these condos?
Oh,
Because it does make,
it's a co-op.
it's a co-op? Okay, so it falls
Yeah.
under 719. Okay. What you're asking is fire department staff arbitrarily restrict use of common property. They are definitely allowed to do that if they see that there is some type of life safety concerns.
Okay, there you go. Life-saving concerns. Well, in this particular case, there is no life-saving concern. It's simply a bicycle parked in a stairwell, and it doesn't obstruct the passageway for emergency fire personnel or cause any kind of hazard. This is what I'm concerned about. What recourse do apartment owners have when fire department staff come in and arbitrarily just come up to your door, knock on it, and tell you they don't like the bicycle over there in the hallway? That's
Let me
what
give
I'm
you,
asking.
let
What
me
would
give
be
you an
the-
answer to that. I'm going to give
Thank
you a
you.
very quick answer to that. I deal probably every month, at least once or twice, with the Miami-Dade County Fire Marshal. I don't always agree with what they've done. I don't agree a lot of times, especially in Dade County. I've even told these firefighters, you guys, since the county took you out of one group and now you have to collect your own revenue. In other words, to get your own budget, you guys have a knife in your mouth. You're out trying to hit people left and right for nonsense. So you do have the ability to challenge these people. And a lot of times they will send an inspector out. My advice is very simple, that old fashioned, human touch. Ask them to send somebody out, meet with them and say, show me where there's a violation. Show me where there's a
Okay,
life safety issue here. make that connection, because they work for you. Remember, you pay their salaries.
Yeah.
Have them come out, doctor, and have them check it.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next question. A lot of documents are online in Broward.org. Sometimes you may have to go back years to original developer to find and get all amendments. I did search for records and found going back to 1980 along with all units, property lines for HOA. I think that's more of a comment. I'm sorry. Okay. What is any regular regarding mandatory flood insurance for regulation regarding mandatory flood insurance for buildings? The banks will not provide mortgage unless the building has flood insurance. Our building removed these this year. Okay, let me try to correct that. Our building removed this year, the flood insurance this year. My question is on behalf of some owners that have mortgages.
I think that's one for the realtors, but I may just say, remember this word called a Loma letter? Because a lot of areas were redesignated by the federal government to be in flood areas, and they really were not. And what we did in the private sector as property managers is we've hired somebody to do a Loma letter, and then we realized we took that very huge cost off the back of the owners, which really it wasn't a flood area. But anyway, I'd like to hear the realtors, because that's something that they're going to require in the purchase if there is a flood area. But that's how I've dealt with it in the past.
So Jennifer, Adam, were you guys on the webinar this morning for Florida Realtors? It's called Risk Rating 2.0. That's the name of it. And they talked about, in a nutshell, NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program. Like Julio just mentioned, they have these zones, and they went through and they showed the slide of a house. And then I know we're talking about condos, but in their example, it was a house. So there's a house like right by a river. And then there was a house way, out in the middle of nowhere. And because they're in the same zone, they get the same rate. And so this risk rating 2.0 would come in and they would look at how many miles you are from the water. They look at other risk factors. And so NAR went through a full explanation of how we came up with this. This takes effect on October 1st. That's about all I know in terms of it's new, and I haven't had a chance to research it and learn more about it. But I did have the GAD from New Orleans already reach out because it's going to be, they're saying problematic for them. I don't know how it's going to affect us just yet. Adam, have you heard anything on it? Or Jennifer? You're muted, Adam.
Sorry, and then these changes will take place over the next 7 months. So beginning October 1st, we have, and like I said, this came out today. So we can do that next week as well, but it'll be like a 7-month implementation. As you know, with the realtors in particular, I've been working through a lot of these extensions of the NFIP. We've been working on that long-term solution that we haven't been able to achieve, frankly, but we've achieved these long-term solutions. We're working on one right now. And like Danielle said, NFIP risk rating 2.0 over the next 7 months. So it's all shaken out. We'll find out what that means over the next several months, but that's another issue we're working on.
And Florida statute requires that that associations do their best to obtain, so they don't mandate that they obtain and maintain adequate. It just says that they have to have their best efforts, and it doesn't specifically discuss flood insurance. So that might be something that moving forward legislatively, we want to look at. I believe that is one of the recommendations that the Broward committee put forth that Adam's going to report on next week, was just to remove that language of best efforts and make insurance in general mandatory. But I don't think it related more to property insurance, not to flood. So that might be something that, especially in light of the new regs that are coming out regarding flood insurance, need to be addressed as well next session.
And just one more thing, that's another example where we may not see it in legislation, but we'll see it in policy. So in response to Surfside, Miami-Dade County had an insurance broker come and testify. about the things that she's seeing that is changing as far as like what citizens is asking for, what the private sector is asking for. So from a policy perspective, it may beat the legislative perspective in terms of getting new laws out there.
Okay, next question. I bought my new home and closed March 5th, 21. About 3/21/21, I was moving in and brought my last afternoon car full over. Horrible smell when I opened the door, sewer backed up, raw sewage into the toilet, tub, and shower. Neighbors helped me call the management company. That took over 45 minutes to get someone. The assigned property manager asked me if I thought it was an emergency. Also said he was aware of the problem occurring in January. Don't know if it happened before that. Took over 24 hours to fix, and plumber had to snake out my drain because sewage sat so long. Apparently it was a temporary fix. Management company applied for a permit. City required some kind of letter I had to sign. I know this is in Boca. It's not in Hallandale Beach or in Miami. Board president signed for me without my knowledge or consent. Permit was never issued, and sewer was, I think basically what she's asking in this long question is the realtor or the property manager or the owner liable for not disclosing that there were issues prior to the purchase?
I would think the seller would be. That's supposed to be in the seller's disclosure. If there were any previous backups. So if they know that there had been previous backups because the management stated as much, then they probably have an issue. The realtor would only know about it and be liable, I would think, if the seller had told them something and they just decided to cover it up. But that would definitely be an item that should have been in the seller's disclosure. So I would check with legal counsel.
Agreed. Is it possible, I don't know if I asked this or not, I apologize. Is it possible to pass a legislation to mandate independent audit of all the board's expenses? Julio?
That's going to be a tough one because again, unless there's a reason to do it, you also have to remember, read the article today in the Sun Sentinel that came out. It's a huge article. Read about all the lobbying going on against anything and everything. But they're going
and
to.
that law firm mentioned in the article. I don't name names, but you certainly can. That law firm has been just horrific for condo owners. Horrific.
I've had my dealings with them, as I called them, my nemesis in Tallahassee. But the deal is that something like that, to answer that question, would be, I guess the best way to answer it would say, is that going to be something that's going to be used to say, well, my God, nobody's going to want to be a board member because you're going to go on a witch hunt every time. So I have to, you have to look at at both sides of that question. So unless there's I guess the way I would answer, if there's probable cause, and we do have a fraud task force, they can put it through there. But just to say you have the right to do this whenever you want to a board, you're never going to get a volunteer ever again to be a board member if you're going to constantly, put them in that type of situation. Remember, there's a lot of politics that goes on in these condo communities. So what happens to all those people that just don't like you because they support another group of people? Yeah, that's what concerns me.
Was the audit question related to financials or to the boards themselves?
That's a good question. Is it about their personal money or is it about the association's funds? Is it state?
Commissioner,
You're muted.
I'm muted, of course. That's all I see for that question. But since you're bringing that up, maybe we can cover that quickly as well.
Because I believe that the condos financials are supposed to be audited. And if not, to me, instead of having it be a state legislative thing, that would be something that the board should handle. My concern with anything like the Surfside event is we've been working on realistic and needed legislation for years that's been ignored. And now because of Surfside, there's a really good chance that the pendulum is going to go way overboard and then completely the over-regulated. And to Julio's point is, if you get to a point where you over-regulate something so much, or you put in so much where everybody's liable, you're never going to get anybody to manage the association board. You're never going to get, so I think we have to be really careful to get legislation that passes to deal with the real issues and not the overreaching, overreactive issues as a result of politicians wanting to feel like they did something and that they sponsored some type of legislation.
If you allow me to interject for a moment, in Hallandale Beach, when we were working on the ordinance, originally I had that audits are supposed to be on an annual basis. Correct me if I'm wrong, Representative. And we know of associations in Hallandale Beach, and again, most associations, most board members are upstanding residents, citizens who mean well. This is a thankless job, but then you do have a number that take advantage and commit some egregious and morally unethical acts. But in any event, we've heard of association board members or presidents of associations that have been, residents have asked for a financial audit, and associations haven't had audits for 8 years, 10 years. So I think there has to be some accountability. And I think that board members that serve, they're in charge of sometimes $10 million, $15 million. That's a lot of money. And I think there has to be some more accountability and perhaps a higher standard for a board member to be able to serve, because I see it in Hallandale Beach. There are board members. There's one who's the president of the association, property manager, and the realtor. And she's not had a financial audit in her building for years. So that's with that. Next question. The condominium board where I live are providing 2 options regarding reserves: fully funded reserves or partially funded reserves. There's no option to waive funding reserves by majority voting, according to them, in accordance with statute 718. My questions: 1, does the condo board have a right to force reserves without giving us an option to waive them by majority vote? And then I'll go to the second question. I don't know, Representative, do you want to take that?
That's maybe they have something in their docs. And again, remember, that would be where they would find something like that, because the state statute clearly allows you to waive reserves. But if they're saying that, I would ask to read the docs. Ask them to please read their docs, and somewhere in there it may say that you're not allowed to waive them, that you can either do a 10% or a 10% or a partial. That's in their docs. They need to read that.
Okay, second question.
Real quick for the statute for that, it says fully fund, which is the first proposal that comes out. And then the second proposal is something less than. It doesn't have to be 0.
Yep.
So when they're voting, they're asking you to vote in the fully funded or something less than fully funded.
Got it. Okay.
But they're not giving them the opportunity to waive altogether.
Correct.
So,
those are the 2 options. That's in compliance with the statute.
Yeah. You got to remember, a lot of docs are a lot stronger than statute, and DBPR, basically will refer them back to your condo docs to read it. And as far as the other thing, by the way, just want to be clear, the audits have to be done yearly. That's something that must be done, and those audits, ask for them. That we do them for different communities, and not a single person asked for them. Now I guess they will, because now, due to all the deferred maintenance that's going to be pushed upon them by the city governments and county governments, they're definitely asking show us these dollars, show us where every penny's going. And by the way, that's transparency. All of that is public record. It should be shown to them.
Second part of the question is, what specific section of the statute states that they have the right to require reserves without the option to waive them by majority vote? I think you just covered that. Okay, if possible, can I please have a written summary? Okay, nope, never mind. Let me see where written. Can I please have a written summary or any written material that I, as a condo owner, need to know? So I can't give you a written summary. It says I'm overseas, but maybe we want to go over real quick for everyone else that's listening in or will be viewing this at a later time. As a condo owner, what kind of material or documents do you think that a condo or owner or a new owner or a buyer should be looking for?
Danielle, you guys want to answer that?
I did
I would
post it in
refer
the
you to
chat
the
already.
list. Yeah, Danielle posted a list of everything that our in-house counsel had stated when we were asked the same question by our residential board.
It's numbered 1 through 8 there.
1 through 8 in the chat, right above 7, around 716, she posted it.
Okay. All the comments should be available to view if I post this. If I post this link, it should be available for everyone to see. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? I think I've covered all the questions that I have. I don't think I'm missing anything in the chat section. Representative, do you want to go over some of there's, you know what, let me repost this 1 through 8 in the chat section just in case. So people can see it. There we go. Representative, do you want to go over some of the work that you're working on with Senator Rodriguez and what we'll see in the session, in the upcoming session?
Yeah, I'll go right to the talking points, which are short and sweet. This is what the Condo Fraud Task Force does. It creates the Condominium Fraud Task Force pilot program. Again, pilot meaning that it has to be done on a smaller scale. So it'll be Dade, Broward, and Monroe County. It creates a public-private partnership with, and by the way, this could, or they can hire their own, with what they call a retired law enforcement personnel specializing in fraud and corruption in condominiums. Because for those who are watching in, you know, there's a private group. Tamara Reyes has been on our chats and Zoom meetings many times, and they're doing this successfully in the private sector. These are retired law enforcement officers that were in public corruption and fraud and so forth. And they found a niche, but they got so much work, they can't handle it. And they charge people. So they've been gracious enough to say, listen, we don't care if we go out of business, but the state, since everybody pays $4 in taxes, should provide these services at no charge to people. That's how this thing came about. So again, it establishes the Ombudsman's office responsibility to screen complaints and to forward the findings to the correct agency for investigation, meaning if it's something more administrative, he'll send it over to the DBPR. If it's something after his office, because his office will have subpoena power now too, we'll have auditors, we'll have a lot more personnel, and they find fraud, he's going to go ahead and refer it to the Fraud Task Force. Here's an interesting one. It's going to give the Condo Ombudsman's office the ability to void or cancel any condominium elections where election statutes or any election statutes were violated. And everyone knows this stuff starts with the election process. Here's so much fraud that's being committed, again, in Dade County right from the election. That's the famous question. Representative, how come these board members get to serve 30, 40 years? Well, they're not. The problem is, you know, you talk about manipulating of ballots and stuff. And if you think it's bad enough during presidential elections, you should see what goes on in these associations. Finally, it establishes the hiring of personnel to accomplish its goals and provide inspectors with subpoena power. The task force, to begin, since it's only for 3 counties, can start, it can have more, with 5 financial investigators with subpoena powers, 5 non-sworn investigators with previous law enforcement fraud experience, and then the FDLE shall provide the 5 certified law enforcement officers with the subpoena power, arrest powers, and the ability to present criminal cases to the state attorney's office having jurisdiction. And finally, that task force is going to be funded through the Florida Condominium Trust Fund, that famous fund that gets over 13 million a year. And I think the division of condos only uses not even half of that, and the rest of it is swept up into the general revenue budget for the state of Florida. No, that money needs to be put to work for those that live in condominiums. That's pretty much it. And then finally, the other things I'm working on is the reserve studies, as we said, reserve studies, or what they call reserve calculations. That's going to have to be a mandate also, because people need to have a master plan on what's their either a 5-year expectancy of what's left on the roof, on the structural inspections, on the elevators, on the asphalt, any type of life safety issues. And now one of the things coming into play is galvanized plumbing. Believe it or not, in Florida, galvanized plumbing is deteriorating and buildings are going through millions of dollars. So that's going to be considered a potential for a reserve study. Finally, mandatory reserves, turnover from developers. Listen to this. When a developer turns over a brand new building, what is being looked at, and this will be interesting, especially if you read that article today in the Sun Sentinel, you talk about a very powerful interest will be developers. They give a lot of money to campaigns. But what we're talking about is when a developer finishes building a new building and turns it over, the developer should put in some type of reserve for them, that it's there for 3 years, 5 years, in case if he did shoddy work, that the board doesn't have to go suing them and getting into litigation and spending money, is that they can go into those reserves and fix whatever it is. If the developer built a pristine project, he'll get his money back with interest after the 3 or 5 years. And then finally, the certification reports, which we've spoken about a lot. And I believe the county, I had been working with the Blue Ribbon Task Force that I was appointed to. I think their deal is they wanted to change it to, hold on, I lost you here. So they want to change it instead of 40, probably change it to 30, but starting it at 25, because it takes these associations years to get the thing done. So I think you're going to see a 30, but it must start at 25. In other words, it has to be done by 30. And then finally, I just heard this today, that there are some potential lawmakers that want to go back to what I had in a bill in 2008, which means that every 5 years, anything on coastal areas in Florida, we'll have to do it every 5 years. We'll have to do a structural inspection. That's pretty much it. That's all the notes that I have here. So I'll let you all speak, and thank you for the opportunity, Annabelle. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. You've come on meeting after meeting. Mr. Fernandez, I did not purposely overlook your email. I will say this, let me try to answer some of your questions. So you may not be aware, but I've been really, really sick the last month, and I was really just got back to work on Thursday. I'm still not 100% there where I was before, maybe a few more days or the rest of the week, hopefully. So with regard to your question regarding condo courses, I regret that I just did not have the energy to coordinate with Ms. Rodriguez from DBPR, but I will this week, and I will update courses next week. Next Tuesday at 6:30, we'll have another one of these meetings, and I will update you then. Marty Kerr, who's our Broward County property appraiser, Ms. Blake just typed in, included the link, and I have, let me see if you can see it. I'll include the link to City of Hallandale Beach. There we go, where you can look up the 40-year inspection information that you're asking about. And Ms. Blake did include a link for the entire Broward County, I believe. Yep, browardbcpa.net. So I see a lot of realtors on here. Hopefully a lot of them are with Hallandale Beach. I know I put out a notice to realtors in Hallandale, so please have a look at the chat section, and where you see Ms. Blake provided a link. You all can save that for information for your clients. And let me see what else. I did want to touch on a question and your thoughts, both, realtor associations and representative, regarding 5-year inspections and reserves. I don't understand why we're going from 40 years to recommendation of 30 years. There's so much decay and so much neglect that goes on, whether it's 30 years or 40 years. I don't understand why the recommendation that I've read are saying, well, let's not do every 40 years, we'll do it every 30 years. I really think we need to have a time period of 5 years, maybe 10 years. But so I just wanted to know what your thoughts on that. I drew up a resolution just in support of a recommendation for the county and for the state to consider reducing it. 30 years and 40 years just does not make sense to me, but maybe I'm completely wrong. I'm certainly not an engineer, so just wanted to know what your thoughts are.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I've been thinking the same thing. I think a lot of the years are a little bit arbitrary, and I think it is going to depend in terms of, a condo on the beach that was built in the 60s is going to have much different construction and many different issues than a newer building that was constructed with newer types of materials. I would like to see us do an inspection based more on the life of the different items that a 40-year certification looks at. So if there are items in a 40-year certification that have the chance to deteriorate in 5 years, do a 5-year inspection for just those. Then, because again, if you keep doing these inspections every 5 years, that's also very costly to an association if it's not needed. So I would like to see a little bit more building science built into whatever years are picked, so that it's not so arbitrary. If they pick 30 years because that's the overall life of a building built maybe in the 60s based on the concrete and the rebar and everything that was used back then, great. But, I would like to see, I know they have to do elevator recertifications X number of years. I think they should do the same thing with everything that needs to be looked at for the structural integrity and electrical and everything else of a building, and work with BOMA or some of these other engineering groups to see, let's get an inspection when these items, which have a life of 10 years, let's to Representative Robaina's issue, let's start the process of the inspection at 5 years, so that by year 10, the electrical part, if that's what needs to be inspected, and then that should be good for maybe the next 10 years. And then at year 20, you're inspecting those items again, if they only have a 10-year life, and then whatever would be coming due in 20 years. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I think there are issues in a building, not the whole building's not going to go bad, and not all the items need to be inspected at either 30 years or 40 years. There's some items that are probably going to be at their end of their useful life significantly sooner, and those should be inspected then, such as a roof. And to the point of some of the insurance issues, we're already seeing this, where a lot of insurance companies in the state of Florida are no longer insuring a roof at all if it's over 10 years old. They don't care what the lifeline is on that house. I mean, on that property, you could have a roof that's, supposed to last, like a metal roof is supposed to last, 30, 40, 50 years. The insurance companies don't care because of all of the insurance fraud. So they're saying, we're not insuring anything with the roof that's over 10 years old, period, the end. So
and let me jump in, because Jennifer spoke about a lot of good issues. That insurance carriers are now sending letters to all these associations demanding that there's proof of a structural inspection. If not, they are basically dropping them. That's going to be a huge issue. We haven't even talked about insurance issues. That's a whole nother battle that I'm sure will take place in Tallahassee, but that's a big problem, because again, it's just it's going to be a cost prohibitive type situation, in my opinion. So it's going to be something that it's going to be taken up. I'm going to what Jennifer was talking about, reserve calculations. That's why I had put it in my bill in 2008, mandatory reserve calculations and an inspection every 5 years, because government can continue to mandate, but if you got a group of people that know what they're doing, and I'm going to talk to you about what type of board members we should have in the future, is that you should let them do their own reserve calculations, and according to the life expectancy on the roof, on the elevators, on the the parking area, of the plumbing, all this stuff we spoke about, they're the best ones to decide by hiring a professional. I want to be clear, they have to hire a professional, come in and tell you, okay, you do have 10 years, plan accordingly, put money aside accordingly. Your elevators got 2 years left, start putting money aside right now. Your plumbing is horrendous, these buildings are blowing up, galvanized stuff, you need to start now. So that common sense needs to be given to the board members. And as far as board members are concerned, this is Eric's big issue. We need to get rid of something that I unfortunately had to put in the law because of the law firms. Remember, we wanted, if you're going to be a board member, yes, you're a volunteer, but you also must remember that you're taking on a huge responsibility. Financially, you're going to be in charge of the integrity of the building. So one of the things we want to eliminate is this affidavit that people claim that they read the statute. Oh yeah, because you know who's filling it out for them? Their property managers are setting up, hey, just sign it, say you read 718, and now you pass the requirement. That's nonsense. I would like to see them take at minimum a whole day course. That's even too short in my opinion, but 2 hours or signing an affidavit, it was very weak. It was a start back in 2008, but it needs to go further because you got to have people on there that understand what they're doing, so that the property manager or the law firm are not guiding them. They need to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And when they need a legal opinion, they'll get a legal opinion. When they need the manager to step in. So I think those affidavits are going to be gone. And that's it. I mean, that's just one of the things that I'm glad Jennifer spoke about. Yeah, listen, if you live in the coastal area, you have seen what salt water does to balconies. Look at these balconies. You can see the rebar. Folks, wake up. My God, you don't have to be a brain surgeon, but let's allow each building individually to hire a professional, do a study, and let them plan accordingly. Now that I believe it will have to have a mandatory reserve, but let it be based on how you fund it, based on your reserve calculation. Common sense sometimes really eludes us in the world of lawmaking.
Commissioner, we had this question asked, and Commissioner Raquel Regalado, who is a county commissioner in Miami-Dade County, she answered it and said, she's been leading the charge on this for Miami-Dade County. And of course, she's advocating for, shorten it from 40 years to maybe 25-year notification, and then you pass it 30 years. And she said kind of the compromise on that is that they don't have staff. Building directors are very difficult to get right now, as you probably know. And then also, even in the private sector, those engineers specialize in like concrete, for example. So when you're going to study the structural integrity of a building, it takes a very specific type of engineer to be able to do that report. And just unfortunately, in the private sector, they don't have enough of those. That boards are lining themselves up 7 years out with the engineers that are needed to conduct a 40-year recertification period. So, and then Miami-Dade County doesn't have the building director staff to go out and verify that all these reports were conducted accurately. They rely on random auditing. So that's the flip side, the counter argument to doing it in a 5-year.
And just food for thought or some history. Do you know that the Miami-Dade County and Broward, I'm not sure Monroe still has it, are the only ones that have these 40-year certifications? And some history on this is interesting. We had a town hall meeting in Doral several weeks ago, and the grandfather who came up with this, a guy by the name of John Pistorino, was there. And boy, that's why I love attending these meetings, so that I can learn, well, who did this? He basically told us that he did this back in the 70s when some structure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, crumbled, and out of I'm going to call it what it is, a knee-jerk reaction. They assigned these, they did this, but they only applied it to Dade and Broward. The rest of the state does not have these requirements. Doesn't that sound interesting or strange
It
or
was
wrong?
only Dade, and then Broward adopted it in
And then Broward
2005.
picked it up. There's your
Yeah.
history on how this came about. So I want people that are on this meeting to understand, you live in Palm Beach on up. Yeah, you don't have to worry about no 40-year certification.
So what would your advice be? I'm not going to call out the association, but we're well familiar with this building, Representative. I don't want to call out the building or the association, but a building that 10 years ago, 11 years ago, without naming the building, but I'm sure you know which building I'm referring to. I know that there are residents on tonight from that specific building. You know, I just want to say, I know people have asked for your information, and I take the time out to text you and say, you know, Representative, such and such resident has asked for your information. They'll be reaching out to you, and then they don't reach out to you, and you take the time out of your very, very busy schedule to get back to me. So if you're going to ask for Representative Robaina's information, and you take time out of my day and time out of his day for me to coordinate it, please follow through and contact Mr. Robaina. But that building has some really structural issues with the, again, I'm not an engineer. By the way, Mr. Fernandez, I see the last part of your question, and I'll get to it. I did order some manuals and books from the American Concrete Institute to educate myself about construction and concrete and beams and all that good stuff, because it's not my forte. I'm not an engineer, but I will be more than happy to share any information that would be germane to the topics that we've covered in past meetings and this meeting. But I know that there are some residents from that specific building on here. What would you recommend for them to do? Because this is an ongoing issue, and I think, unless I'm wrong, if they all put their money into one pot and either retain legal counsel or retain your services, what would you suggest for those residents?
Well, Anna, same thing I tell everybody. I get the same question from 5 different people in the same building, and I tell them, why don't you all get together, strengthen numbers. You guys just come together, hire if you need to hire, an attorney. But right now, on issues that have to do with the structural integrity of a building, right now, there's no need to spend any money on any attorneys. Just call the municipality. Before, it would take a month to get somebody out. Now, if you call, they come running because they're scared that, something happened and they're alerted and it'll take action. Now they're going to be, as Jennifer says, they're going to politically be on radio and TV being told, look, they were negligent. They were told about this and they didn't show up. They're showing up. But the answer to your question is come together. A lot of times, it requires for people to pull their money together and hire an attorney. And if it's a civil issue, to file suit. It's a shame because it's a double whammy. You're paying for an attorney, but then they're using your maintenance payment to use the attorney for the association to go against you. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, but that is just the way this process is set up. And then finally, some of that stuff in there, I'm not going to go into detail. There's potential fraud. There's mismanagement. There's all kinds of stuff. Here I go again. Those people have tried, they have exhausted where to go asking for help, whether it was DBPR.
Exactly.
And, there's not much they can do. Hopefully this fraud task force will actually send the message, we're here and we are going to investigate. And I'm hoping that will be one of the solutions to the problem that they're having at that particular building.
Well, it is 8:03. I'm sure everyone wants to go have dinner or spend some time with their family. So I want to thank all of you for coming on tonight. It's been very, very helpful. I get a lot of really great feedback from people that are not able to attend, but then watch the videos later. I have very, very good feedback. And the fact that we had new people on today that I've not seen before, and really a nice amount of realtors on, is really, really great, because I think collectively, whether, you know, commissioners, the Realtor Association, you representative, senator, but realtors, the more informed you are, the better service you can provide to your buyers, educate your sellers. And then I don't know if you'd be amenable to come back on. It was because I got an email tonight. Okay, I don't know what that means, but if you'd be amenable to come back on next week, Mr. Robaina, next Tuesday, if you're available. I'd like to talk next week about Kaufman language, and perhaps have a suggestion for you for residents on how they can adopt Kaufman language in their condo docs if they don't already have that, because I think that could be a game changer as well. And if you think I'm wrong, please let me know if you think. This is not my forte. Again, I just doing my best to learn from everything that I can. Thank you for all the useful information. I'm sure when renewing my CAM license, we will go over these issues and statutes. Hopefully, hopefully, you're more than welcome. Everyone on here is more than welcome. It's, you know, it's my pleasure. I wish we didn't have to have these meetings, but hopefully the tone of these meetings will take a different one next year when we go into session. So we will be back next Tuesday at 6:30, and we'll hear from Mr. Sanders as well. I don't know if Ms. Blake, if you can come back next week, but we'll see everyone hopefully next week, 6:30. I'll send out the details. Where are you? Mr. Fernandez, just to answer your question, my condo is not yet complied with the city ordinance and condo registration. So I am still waiting to on an opinion, a legal opinion on how we're going to enforce this ordinance. Unfortunately, because we were so understaffed in the building department, that took precedence of everyone at the city attorney's and city manager's office. But I think we've finally been able to, you know, assuage some of the issues there. So hopefully I can have a response for you next week, Mr. Fernandez. I will follow back up with the city attorney. Again, my apology for not being so engaged in the last few weeks, but I promise that I'm back, and hopefully I'll have an answer for you next week, and hopefully that you'll join Mr. Fernandez next week. So thank you very, very much to each and every one of you and all the you know, panelists. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annabelle. You guys have a good night, everyone.
You too. Good night, everyone. Thanks again.